Hello and welcome to Female Cricket Live. The 12th edition of ICC Women's Cricket World Cup will kick-start from 4th of March, that is tomorrow, in New Zealand. The World Cup opener will be played between hosts New Zealand and West Indies, and the match will be played at the Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui. So the match will start at 6:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time, and you can catch all the live action on Star Sports and Disney Plus Hotstar. So ahead of the World Cup, both these teams have played a couple of warm-up matches. While New Zealand have won one out of the two matches, West Indies have suffered defeat on the two warm-up fixtures. So what will happen going into the World Cup opener between New Zealand and West Indies? To talk more about that, I have with me Krisania Young, Dr. Anand Ramprasad, and Dhanush Lavanya. So Krisania Young is a cricket content writer at in West Indies, and she is the chief editor at Mostly Cricket. Dr. Anand Ramprasad has a specialization in sociology of sport and is a columnist at Trinidad Guardian. And Dhanush Lavanya is a content writer at Female Cricket. So I welcome all of you to Female Cricket Live.
Thank you.
Great, great. So, Dr. Anand, let me ask you, the World Cup is going to begin tomorrow. West Indies are going to take on the hosts, New Zealand. So, how is the mood back in West Indies with regards to the World Cup? Sir, you're on mute, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, to answer that question, I want to go back to 2013 when West Indies reached the finals of the 50 overs, and then they won the 2016 ICC T20 World Cup. I thought the mood and the interest in women's cricket increased, and not only in terms of awareness, but in terms of the fact that the team is very competitive. And since the last World Cup in 2017 to 2021, despite the impact of COVID, I think there's a lot of interest in the team. There's greater coverage of West Indies cricket, not only just West Indies cricket, but women's cricket on the whole. So I think there's a lot of expectation of the World Cup in a whole, but also the performance of the West Indies team.
Dhanush, can you unmute yourself?
Krisania, my question was simple. The warm-up matches that we saw right now, a couple of days ago, we saw West Indies take on India and Australia. How do
Yeah.
you feel the performance was? How has been the warm-up according to you? And how will the team be going to the World Cup?
Well, I think the worry that we all have continued throughout the warm up games. I think our bowling attack has not been getting enough credit, but they continued to do well. They restricted Australia to just 259. That Australian attack and that Australian team, I'll take that. 259 in 50 overs. And then with India, 258 again. I will take that. They took 10 wickets against India. But then the batting, they only scored 169 against Australia and then 177 against India. So I think the issues are still with the rest of the batting coming good, which they have not been able to produce consistently for some time now. But head coach Courtney Walsh, he would have taken the positives from Stephanie Taylor. Her preparations for the World Cup has been a bit unsettling, missing games through injuries and other stuff. But the 66 that she got against, was it Australia? He would have taken positives from that. Her bowling was a bit erratic when she tried to come into the attack against South Africa, but she took 2 wickets against India, and then I think two against Australia. I think three against India. So I'm very happy that Stefani looks to be bowling well again. Haley Matthews also did well with the ball in both the games. She had runs in the second game against India with the bat. Kaisia Knight got a start, didn't really kick on, but Shimen Campbell and what she got in the run she scored in the second warm up game. So I think these are the little things, putting aside the result, that head coach Courtney Walsh would take the positives from.
Absolutely. So, as Krisania, you rightly mentioned that though West Indies ended on a losing side in the warm up fixtures, there were definitely plenty of takeaways for this colorful Caribbean side. So, Dr. Anand, let me ask you that Cristania just talked about that West Indies could manage 160 odd runs against Australia, 170 odd runs against India, but the lack of ability to go past that 200 run mark in the 50 over format. Do you think that that will be a problem going into this World Cup? And if yes, how can the West Indies look to solve this problem?
Yes, I think that's a worrying problem. The ability, especially if we bat first, to go beyond 250. If we look at some of the warm up matches, and even if we look at the series between India and New Zealand, you need a score of maybe 250 plus to be competitive. And looking at the not only the warm up matches, but the recent series against South Africa, um, we continue to have this issue with batting. And that is something that is going to be very worrying to the coach. In terms of addressing this, I think what is required, we need partnerships. We need players to bat around the big three, as we would call them, Dotting, Matthews, and Taylor. But we need the other players as well to bat around them and also make contributions. One of the challenges we have had over the last couple series is that of strike rates, the amount of dot balls we have accumulated. And so rotation of strike is going to be critical, the ones, the twos, in addition to the boundary hitting. I think all of these things will contribute toward putting us a good score on the tin if we bat first, but also even if we are chasing. And finally, in terms of batting, I would like to see more contributions from the lower order. Heading into this World Cup, we can expect that scores that are going to be posted will be high, and we're going to see the lower order of teams making contributions. And this is something I would like to see coming out of the West Indies team, especially when they bat first, to be able to put a competitive score and then give the bowlers something to bowl at, to defend.
Dr. Anand, my question is the first match that we are having tomorrow, New Zealand versus West Indies. It's happening in Bay Oval in Mount Maunganui. And New Zealand, being the home team, they have a record of 3 wins in 12 matches so far. But West Indies, on the other hand, are coming off with 2 losses in the warm up games and not so good series against South Africa. This Bay Oval is a completely new ground for them. How will the approach from the whole team be when it comes to playing in a new ground?
Okay, I would looking at the two warm-up matches where we they would have chased and fell short by large margins. Once they have looked at the pitch and the conditions seem not to provide any like a green top, which will then favor um, inserting the opponent, I would think that heading into this first game, it might be wise to bat first, put a good score on the board, and use scoreboard pressure in terms of and applying scoreboard pressure to the New Zealand team because it's a World Cup, it's the first game, and the record at this venue has shown that teams batting first, you have 7 wins, teams batting second, 7, and the average score is 256. So I think, and given recent performance, that it may be better if the West Indies bat first and put a good score on the board and then use scoreboard pressure backed by bowling and fielding to put pressure on the New Zealand team.
Right, so Dr. Anand says that maybe if Stephanie Taylor wins the toss tomorrow, she may elect to bat first, given that in the two warm up matches that we saw, West Indies ended on the losing side when they were chasing scores of in excess of 250. So, Krisania, let me ask you that it is going to be a day night match tomorrow between West Indies and New Zealand. So, how much will that play on a captain's mind going into the toss?
And that is why I kind of disagree with Dr. Anand. I think the West Indies should bowl first. I think our batting, if this makes sense to anyone that is not me, but our batting is stronger, but our bowling, I think, is much more complete and well rounded. So I think that they should insert New Zealand. They're the home team. Pressure is on them. You throw the ball to Connell from one end, Henry from the other. Allow them to swing it for the first 6. get wickets, put them under pressure, and then whatever target you have, you know where you're going now. So if you get them out for 230, 250, or 270, you know what you need to do to get there. The Matthews, the Taylors, the Duttins, they will then know. And then the Dew hopefully will play a role in the chase. So I think that the West Indies should insert New Zealand and then try to get the score afterwards.
Well, as far as looking into the playing 11 of West Indies, one name that sticks out to me is Hayley Matthews. She has been excellent over the last couple of years, I have to say. She was she was nominated for the best ODI cricketer of the year and emerging. She was the emerging cricketer of the year in 2021, and she has been excellent in the last couple of months as well with against South Africa and all. For me, she is the player to watch out for in the game because if she gets a good start, she is going to make it big. Dr. Anand, whom do you see as a player who is going to be starting out big for West Indies?
In addition to Healy, I would look at Deandra Dotting, her all-round performance, both with the bat as well as the ball. And we cannot underestimate her fielding. She brings a lot in terms of the fielding, which can inspire the other fielders in the team. So she's definitely one of the players that I'll be looking at. Deandra Dotting, Haley Matthews, and of course the captain, Stephanie Taylor, who is the rock in terms of the batting. And I do agree with my colleague that if the batters, our strength is our batting. And if these three players click, whatever score that has to be gained, they would be able to take the team there. But again, we will need the support of the other batters. But the three players I would look at is Haley Matthews, Deandra Dotting, and the captain, Stephanie Taylor.
Of course, cannot agree more with you, Dr. Anand. Deandra Dottin is going to be a player to watch out for, not only from the West Indies perspective, from the global perspective as well, because we all cannot forget that 150 not out which she hit against South Africa. And I'm sure if the match would have continued, probably the double century was on the cards for Dottin. So, Krisania, let me ask you that Deandra Dottin, Haley Matthews, and of course, Stephanie Taylor is there. But do you think there is too much dependence on Stephanie Taylor and Anisa Mohammed?
But if they, yes, because if they are performing and then the others are not stepping up, then yes, we will call that dependence. But again, we've seen a bit of improvement from the others. There is Shamila Connell under since Courtney Walsh was appointed head coach in October of 2020, but his first game was in July of 2021. Connell has gone on to record career best figures of 5 for 54 against South Africa. Dutton's highest score came under in this era as well, the 150. Chedi Nation, her highest score came again as well in this era. So I think performances are improving. Give credit where credit is due. It's not complete, they're not peaking, let me use Courtney Walsh's words, but they're coming together. So I think we can't, the World Cup is there to be won, so we can't say that the World Cup has come too soon. Or let's look beyond the World Cup. The World Cup is there to be had. You will play for the World Cup, but again, we acknowledge that the West Indies are not there yet, but we can also say that they are improving.
Uh, Dr. Anand, when it comes to a game against New Zealand, the top three of their side is Sophie Devine, the captain, Susie Betts, who has been one of the excellent players over the last decade or decade and a half, and the emerging Emilia Kerr, who has been extremely good since 2020, 2021. She's still 21 and she has been excellent both with bat and ball, scoring 350 runs against India in the recently concluded ODI series. She took 7 wickets with the ball. With these three big guns in the top three, it is really important for the West Indian bowling unit to chip in that quick wickets in the first 10 overs in the power play. Do you see any bowlers who can do that for West Indies?
At the start of the innings, I think Cornell Salmon will have an important role to play in dislodging the early batters for New Zealand and putting them under pressure. So Susie Bates, You have Divine and then Kerr coming 1, 2, 3, and then Starterweight also probably batting at number 4. So I think the opening spell led by Connell, and if Salman opens with her, is going to be critical in terms of laying the groundwork for West Indies to make inroads. We cannot allow these players to settle in. We saw in that series against India, all of them contributing throughout the series, especially Kerr. So I think the opening bowlers will have an important role to play in dislodging the New Zealand batters early and putting pressure on the middle and lower order.
Absolutely. It is going to be a daunting task, if we may say so, for West Indies and, of course, for other teams to stop these top three New Zealand batters from firing. So, Dhanush, let us get you in. We are talking about New Zealand, and we can remember the warm up match that New Zealand played against Australia, the mighty Australians, who are six-time world champions, but beating Australia in that fashion, winning the match by 9 wickets with 7 overs to spare, scoring 322 runs. How big was that win for New Zealand, and what will be the motivation and momentum that they'll carry into this World Cup?
Well, first of all, the big motivation altogether, according to me, will be the home advantage. They are the home side, they are the hosting nation. They will surely be coming in as the favorites, irrespective of any other team. And as far as the performance against Australia is concerned, it was like a breathtaking one, right? Sophie Devine was just going ablaze, and she got great support with Susie Bates and Emily Kerr. She scored 92 in that 206-run partnership. They were not out at the end of the match. They chased off with 9 wickets in hand. And overall, coming into the tournament, New Zealand are a team who have been extremely good over the last few months. They had a good 2021, and 2022 they had a 4-1 victory over Team India. Team India is, as we all say, for us it's favorites, but they have been really good as well. They are not a easy side, and defeating them in home and with the home advantage, it's going to be pretty much a big factor for New Zealand, because they will be favorites irrespective of the situations, irrespective of the teams they are facing. And going into this match against West Indies, they will be making sure to utilize all the key minuses that are there in West Indies. The bowling unit, as Crisania was saying, that no, and that the players haven't been stepping up that much as expected when it is compared to other sides. So these top three batters are really key for the side, and I really hope that they will be scoring the bulk of the runs and taking the scoreboard to a high so that they can decimate West Indies with the ball, because they have experienced Leah Tahuhu in there. Hannah Rowe had a really good ODI series against India and was very good with the ball in the warm-up games as well. Amelia Kerr, the leg spinner, she has been extremely good as well. So overall, they have a complete side compared to the West Indies, and they will be going in as the favorites, is what I would say.
Prisania, do you agree with Dhanush that New Zealand are the favourites for tomorrow's match against West Indies?
Yes, I think so. Because they are more complete, as he said, and they are also at home. But I think someone who will play an important role will be Chanel Henry. The West Indies have been opening with Shamilia Connell and Shakira Selman for the last while. They've been sticking with Henry, but she was bowling in the middle overs. In South Africa, against South Africa, they changed that. They gave Chanel Henry the new ball to swing the ball. That is her strength. She gets so much movement, and she did so well. In New Zealand, against New Zealand, with the new ball, I think, along with Connell, Chanel Henry will be a key player for the West Indies to make inroads into that dominant top order that they have.
So, Dr. Anand, my question is Stephanie Taylor. She has been like the face of the West Indian side for the last decade, and being the all rounder that she is, and she has had a very decorated career, like how Mithali Raj and Julian Goswami has for India. She's looked up to that level of as far as West Indies is concerned. How much dependency on her is going to be in this tournament? Because apart from her and Anisa Mohammed, the others are not as much as experienced as these two are.
Yeah, I think that there is going to be a lot of dependency on Taylor. in terms of her overall performance, both with the bat and the ball, and of course being the leader. And I think that has to do with the fact that our batting has been very inconsistent outside of the top three. We have not been able, our other players have not been able to string consistently scores that could instill confidence in the other three, and also relieve the pressure of knowing that every time you go out to bat, you are carrying the weight of the team. That if I have a bad game, or if the other two top batters have a bad game, the team is going to be under severe problems. And I think that has been one of the major problems that West Indies have had over the years. When you compare, let's say, for instance, let's go to the series between New Zealand and India. You would have seen in some cases, you may have lost some quick wickets, and by the middle and the lower order were able to pull together scores, competitive scores. And I think that has been one of our major issue in West Indies cricket. Too much dependency on the top three, and in this case, the captain, in that she's carrying the weight of the team. And I honestly believe that it may even affect her cricket. As much as she performs well, I think there's more from her, but she knows that, if I don't perform, it adds further pressure on the team. So I think that's one of our major challenges, in that the lack of consistency by the other players, the other batters, have directed that, switched more pressure onto the Taylor, and in terms of her performance, what is expected of her.
So, Dr. Anand, of course, mentioned about West Indian middle order, which looks to be slightly weaker compared to other seven participating nations in this World Cup. But Chrisania, let me ask you that we spoke about the opening bowling combination in, say, Cornell and Henry. But if I have to ask you, could open the batting for West Indies? Because in one match we saw Rashada Williams opening the batting, in the other we saw Alia Elaine opening the batting, and Deandra Broughton, of course, is the fixed opener. So who do you
Yes.
think see opening the batting with Broughton?
Under head coach was, we've seen so many changes in the rules of these players, and I think one said was Dutton moving up the order in ODI cricket, and Haley Matthews moving down to number 5, and they were working with that. Rashada Williams came in to open with DeAndre Dutton, and she started so well against South Africa. 30 odd, 40 odd, 70 odd not out, and she seemed so difficult to dislodge. But she's been the resident opener. After that series, she fell on tough times. Her highest score in 9 games was what? 15. But it's Rashada Williams and DeAndre Dutton. That's what the West Indies were working with as an opening pair. But she got injured in that match against Australia. And which is where my concern came in about this West Indies team. The lead selector and Brown John, Courtney Walsh, they've both said that the team is well balanced. It's not. It's a very good squad. The bowlers are changeable. The bowlers in the 11 and the bowlers in the squad. But for the batting, one injury and the entire team is left imbalanced. That is why Alia Aline opened the batting. She's an all rounder. She's a bowling all rounder. She bats at 8 or 9, but they don't have anyone else to open the batting. That is why she opened the batting. I don't think they want to move Haley Matthews from number 5 because she's doing so well. So they tried Alia Aline in the final warm up game. They might return to Haley Matthews if Rashada Williams is not ready to play the first ODI. But Rashada Williams, DeAndre Dutton, that is the West Indies opening pair in the last year or so.
Krisania, my question is about Alisa Mohammed had a interview recently, and she said that she is expecting to make sure that she will motivate the West Indian team altogether, and try to win this World Cup, because she and Stephanie Taylor, they are in their mid 30s, and they won't be expecting to play one more World Cup after this. And with the performance of West Indies over the last 4 years, post 2017 World Cup, the record says that they have won 13 out of the 39 matches. So the records have been not so good. but there is this motivation, there is this desire from an experienced one like Anisa Mohammed and Stephanie Taylor. How do you see the approach of West Indies going all together?
Well, if we split those 39 games into two halves, preceding the 2017 World Cup, and then when Courtney Walsh took over, you have 20 games and then you had 18 games. They won only six from the previous 20. Then they have a 50% win record from these last 18. Two via the Super Overall. But under Courtney Walsh, they're winning one of every two games. And that is good. That is why I say the West Indies, they are not there yet, but they're coming. Under Courtney Walsh, they're not perfect, but they are improving. I don't think it will be difficult for them, Taylor and Mohammed, to inspire the rest. They've been around each other so much because there's no regional cricket. So when the camps are being held, it's the same players over and over again in the camps, to tours, whatever. And they look up to them. They are like icons. They're doing their job. They're legends of the game, not only in West Indies cricket. If you see what Chrisma Ramarak is doing, I think, and she's been doing so well, the offspring. I think Anisa Mohammed has had an effect on her. When you look at Rashada Williams, there are people saying that she's a mini Stephanie Taylor. So I don't think it will take much for them to influence these young players. You're living with each other, you're playing with each other, you're giving advice, you're competing and fighting for each other. I think it's just natural being around each other so much that the experience and the advice that you pay attention to it, and that the quality traits that these world class players have, that it rubs off on the others.
Of course, and in the same interview which Dhanush was mentioning, right, about Anisa Mohammed, she specifically mentioned that she does not want to retire with that 2016 World T20 only in her kitty. She wants the 50 over World Cup in her kitty when she hangs up her boots from playing international cricket. All right, so Dr. Anand, let me ask you that Krisania, through her answers, has been talking about the role of Courtney Walsh, who has been the head coach of West Indies women's cricket team. So, according to you, what has his role been in molding and grooming these players?
I think what Courtney would have been doing since he has taken over the coaching is developing a structure, establishing players in different roles, that knowing the roles that they have to perform, and then performing in those roles, establishing the order in terms of your openers, your middle order, the ensuring you he has organized the bowling attack in such a way that there is a structure now that when the players are there, they know what they have to do and in order to perform, and also perform not only individually but collectively. So I think that has been one of the features of his being there at this point in time, where he is sort of establishing that structure upon which the team will build its performance moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. The role of Courtney Walsh is going to play a massive role going into this World Cup for West Indies women's cricket team. So, Krisania, Dhanush, and Dr. Anand, we can go on and on about the upcoming match between New Zealand and West Indies. But we are also getting some nice questions from our viewers and fans. So, if you may allow, we can take a few of them.
Sure.
Great. All right. So we have the first question up. Mohit Bararia is asking, looking at the warm-up games, what do you think will be the par score in this tournament? Also, the fact that women's games in general are high scoring these days. Krisania, would you like to take this up?
Yes, I think for the West Indies part, we saw 250, 260. I think around 280. That's what I'm thinking would be par on this ground. The women, they're batting faster, innovative batting, and all of that. They're scoring faster. I think around 280 would be par.
Dr. Anand, do you agree with Krisania or you have a bigger number in mind?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with her. 280 plus. I am expecting in this World Cup. I'm really excited and looking forward to that, especially looking at some of the matches and the series between and New Zealand. If that is a gauge, which was a competitive series, and you had scores 270 plus, in that series, and you actually had both teams coming very close. So I'm looking at 280 plus as well.
So Prisania and Dr. Anand saying 280 and 280 plus, of course. So viewers, be ready for all the fireworks that you are going to see in this World Cup. And especially with West Indies playing tomorrow, having big hitters in Deandra Doughton and Stephanie Taylor, be ready for all the fireworks tomorrow. All right, so can we take up the next question? Okay, Siddesh Vaikar is asking, it's question for you, Dr. Anand. What has changed in West Indies side since 2016? Because this team won a T20 World Cup, defeating mighty Australia.
What has changed? I think the move towards a greater level of professionalism in terms of preparation for different series. More effort has been placed in terms of preparing the teams for their various series and tournaments. We may not have gotten the results since 2016, but Cricket West Indies have been pushing on promoting the preparation of the senior teams heading forward in terms of broaden the coaching staff. And so I think in preparing the team, there's a greater emphasis on that. It hasn't translated in the kinds of results that we would have liked to see, but it's a work in progress. I think we will bear the fruits of that in subsequent years.
All right. Okay. Can we take the next question, please? Okay. Julie Khurana is asking, on which channel can I see it live, please? Okay. So if you are in India, it is on Star Sports, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Anand and Prisanya, it's on ESPN.
Yes, you're
And
correct.
all
Yes.
right. So, and if you are in New Zealand, it is on Sky Sports. And of course, you can check it online. Where else? If you are in a different location, you can check it where you can see all the live action. But yes, it is going to be televised live. All right. So Mohit Bararia has another question. It's a question for you, Prisania. What do you think of Anisa Mohammed, who has been a legend of the game since 2003? She deserves an ODI World Cup, doesn't she?
I'm so impressed with Anita. She was in and out of the team inexplicably for a while. I think it was 2018, 2019, and she was so professional. She put her head down. She bowled well. She was given the vice captaincy. She's come back. She was a part of the women's ODI team of the year, and she's been such an inspiration. So yes, I do believe it would be the perfect send off for her to get this World Cup.
Right. Okay. Can we take the next question? Okay. Wheel of Time. Okay. This question is for both of you. Can Deandra play at number three, followed by Stephanie Taylor, Haley Matthews to hit 270 plus? Even if the openers deliver a 70 plus opening stand with caution every match, it would set a base. Dr. Anand, can you go first? And maybe after him, Krisania can go.
Yeah, I think DeAndre is going to be playing as the opener for this series. So she's going to, I think her role is going to be twofold. One, in terms of laying the foundation and batting as deep as possible, because we know once DeAndre bats long, you're going to get a big total. And so she's going to carry that burden where she's going to be required to be the person to bat as long as possible. And once she bats long, you're going to get, I think, a high score, because then the other batters will have someone to build on the performance of DeAndre.
Krisania, do you agree that Deandra Doughton can bat at number three? Do you agree with Wheel of Time?
I think it. I'm liking the West Indies batting lineup as it is at the moment. Dottin opening. We go back to Rashada Williams again. We don't know if she'll be available for the first 1 day, for the first encounter of the World Cup. But she was brought in, I think, to when we saw what she did against South Africa, our mind started going. So she will be able to anchor the innings, maybe giving a bit more freedom to Stephanie Taylor. So Rashada is opening with Deandra Dutton. I think Dutton was moved up because the West Indies, they're not taking advantage of the power play. And it worked out a bit. They succeeded sometimes, sometimes they fell short, but I like the balance of Rashada anchoring Deandra Dutton taking full advantage of the power play. Stephanie Taylor, all things being equal, coming in at number 4, knowing that Rashada is there to rotate strike, to stay. So she gives freedom to DeAndre Dutton. She gives freedom to Stephanie Taylor. Haley Matthews is batting at number 5. She also has a bit more freedom. I'm liking this batting lineup as it stands at the moment. Kaisian Knight also coming into a bit of form. If a wicket were to fall in the power play, she comes in. Her role would, I think, she would assume the role, even though she can go hard. She'll assume the role of whatever wicket falls. I think Kaisian Knight has that ability. So if Rashada Williams is the wicket that falls, she assumes that role of the anchor. If it is Dutton, she assumes the role to score a bit more quickly. But as things stand, I like the West Indies batting lineup with Dutton opening, Stefania Tail, Haley Matthews performing admirably at 5.
Interesting. Let us see what happens going into the match tomorrow against New Zealand. Do we see a changed batting lineup, or West Indies stick to the basics of Deandra Doughton and Rashada Williams opening? All right, we have another question from Siddesh Vaikar. He's asking if West Indies bats first, how many runs should they score if the bowlers want to defend it against in-form New Zealand? Prasanna, can you take this up first?
I said that the West Indies should bowl first, but if they were to bat first, I think 260, and you give this bowling lineup again. If Connell's length is right on the day, Chanel Henry is moving the ball, Shakira Selman, she's doing so well in the middle overs, which is also a new role for her. Haley Matthews, so well with the ball in the last year or so. Anisa Mohammed, maybe there's Afi Fletcher to come. I think 260, and because that's what I thought the West Indies were trying to do against South Africa in the Caribbean, if I was not mistaken. They were trying to put runs on the board and give the bowling attack something to bowl at. The one time they got to a decent score was it in the fifth one day international. They were able to force a super over, which they won. So I think 260, and this bowling lineup, they can hold their own.
Dr. Anand Krisania feels 260 could be a good score for West Indies to defend. Do you agree with her, or you have a different score in mind?
260 is not a bad score, but in my mind, I'm looking at around 275. The extra runs is always good. More pressure, you can get that extra 15 runs. And I think this is where, if we bat first, the importance of rotating the strikes, not having too much dot balls is important. And that's one of our challenge we have had over the years, where, we a lot of ball hitting, we not picking up the singles as much as we should. So I think I would go for about 275. Extra runs is always going to put pressure on the team batting second. Despite the fact that New Zealand had a good run against Australia, this is the start of the World Cup, and that pressure being the home team as well. And so, yeah, 275, I think, would be a competitive score for our bowlers.
All right, great, great. So it was wonderful talking to all of you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Krisania, Dr. Anand, and Dhanush for taking out time and talking to us about the exciting match that we are going to witness tomorrow between New Zealand and West Indies. It is going to be the World Cup opener. The match will be played at Bay Oval, and the match will start at 6:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time, and you can catch all the live action on Star Sports and Disney Plus Hotstar. So thank you once again, and thank you to all the viewers and fans for joining our conversation. And yes, do tune in tomorrow at the same time, 8 p.m., for the previews of the two World Cup matches that will be played on 5th of March. Send in your questions using hashtag Female Cricket Live, and do join us for the conversation tomorrow at 8 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.